In this video, I am going to be talking about the Modulator ability. This is an all-rounder attack ability that gives you plus 30 in your melee, range, and technique. To understand most of this video, you need to watch two videos. One of them is talking about how to stack abilities, and the other one is talking about how souls can help you manipulate some of these percentages. There is an Affixing 101 playlist for those who are new. You can watch that at your own time, but if you want to get into Affixing and understand some of the concepts and things I'm going to explain, then you might want to watch that. But to understand most of this video, for the first half, you would want to watch those two videos I said in the description. There's also a bunch of other playlists when it comes to Affixing. I would have to give a disclaimer somewhere in the middle of the video talking about my opinion about this ability, but for now, let us focus on the factual things. Modulator, once again, gives you plus 30 in melee, range, and technique. You can get a modulator from clones. Clones are pretty much an imitation of someone in-game. It could be your friend, it could be you, it could be some stranger, it could be someone you blacklisted. You get to bump into a clone and they will have a chance to drop a modulator. It's not 100% guaranteed. It is still RNG, meaning that it's just random chance that you might get it to drop on a weapon or unit at a certain slot number. If you don't get it, then better luck next time. You can farm these modulators from doing the advanced quest and bumping into that certain emergency trial, or you do abduction and you do the certain way to actually farm modulators easily. I am going to be talking about returner farming in a bit, but there might be differences with global and the Japanese PSO2, which I will state in that later video. So, modulator. Understand that when it comes to you transferring it, if you have one copy of it, it's not going to work. You can see that it does not pop up over here when I try to select abilities, but if I have two of them, this gives me a 30%, but this is the lowest percent chance. If I want to gamble and try to get it to a higher slot number, or just gamble with just two alone, it will just be at a 30%. Guess what? If I want to increase this chance even further, you can see that it jumps a lot. It went from that 30% to an 80%. There's a 50% difference right there. So I would want 3 to give me the maximum percent with just these modulators. Now there's another way to increase it. I'll talk about it in a bit. But as you can see, any more than 3, it's going to be a waste because it's not going to increase that chance. So 3 is your magic number. The one other ability that can push this even further is the Apprentice, because guess what? This does have an affix. If you see right there, it says Modulator Affix bonus. If I put this in my formula somewhere, excuse me, you can see that 80% went to a 90%. It's a 10% boost. So guess what? If I have a 10% affix week kicking in, that goes to 100% easy. If there's no affix week whatsoever, and this is like at a 0, guess what? Use a 10% affix boost item, it's 100%. Now you can do this same thing with just 2 abilities in itself and then an Apprentice, but it's still going to be at a low percent. So it's going to be transferable at a 40%. If you use an ability boost item, it's going to be the 30%, 40%, you can push this to 70, 80%. If it's a 10% boost, that percent goes into 80, 90. And just to show you guys, yeah, that's what I mean by 80, 90, that you use the plus 30% or the plus 40% to get it to where you need it to go at. But that is the ability and how you can toy around with it. There are other things you need to note. When it comes to the SAF, you can get a weapon SAF of a modulator. All you need to do is plus 35 to weapon. This goes into more details about SAFs, but I do need to do a redo on that. You can look at some of the old videos I have covering it already. But yeah, SAFs, they're easy to manipulate with, and they ignore this sort of function that you had to go through until you finalize it. But once again, that goes more into the SAF video, but I'm not trying to do that. Just note that there are these SAFs, and it can give you a 100% transfer rate of a modulator, as you can see down here. Now, another thing to note would be the fact that a modulator and an ARKS Max cannot be mixed together. They cannot be on the same weapon and or unit. As you can see here, when I try to select both of them at the same time, it's not going to do that. It's going to overwrite each other. So the modulator is going to overwrite the ARKS Max, and the ARKS Max will overwrite the modulator. I can go with a modulator and an ARKS Fever, but that is it. I cannot have either one of these two. You might be wondering, why is this a thing? It might be because they're roughly, or they're close to the same sort of effects, which means that you can't have both of them. You had to choose one or the other. But pretty much it's programmed in the game. When you try to do that, it's not going to happen. It's going to make you choose between a modulator and, well, a modulator or an ARKS Max. The only difference with these two is that an ARKS Max gives you, what is it? Gives you plus 25 all around, and you need 3 ARKS Fevers to do it. Modulator gives you plus 30, you need 3 of them, and the percent is higher than that ARKS Max, is at 80%. So that concludes this video talking about some of the factual stuff when it comes to this modulator. We're going to go into the second half where I'm going to give my opinion about the modulator. Now, don't get offended when I say what I'm going to say, but this is my opinion, and this is something you want to think on. If you don't care, if you want to do whatever you want to do, then go ahead and do so. I'm not telling you guys not to use it. If you farm for this, if you affix smart and you farm for this, go ahead and use it because you farmed for it. Now, you can technically sell so you can get a profit. Go ahead and do that if you want to, but if you want to use it as a temporary fix, you farm for it, go ahead and do so. If you don't really care about my advice and you bought it and you want to use the affix, then go ahead and do so. It's like me going out of my way to make the Guardian so, like, on the day 1. So if you want to be prideful about it and stuff, that's on you. I just want to give my 2 cents and give you guys options and things to think on when it comes to you affixing. So this is gonna be a long portion. So if you're already familiar with the reason why I'm gonna if you are familiar with what I'm gonna emphasize on, because I'm gonna be talking about manipulating and stuff, then you don't need to watch the rest of this video. Or you can go to the description and look for the time skip to go to the conclusion of this. But let me talk about this certain formula. I decided to make this, and you can see that it requires a lot of stuff. It requires a bit of manipulation here and there, but the end goal for this affix is to have Acto D So, Might for Modulator, Deuce Factor, and ARKS. Noble Might. This is going to give you plus 150 in melee power, plus 40 in range and technique, plus 70 in, plus 20 in HP, and plus 7 in PP. Alright, so that looks good. That looks nice, especially if it's on a unit. But the question is, how do I get some of these pieces? Now, Modulator at a 5 slot can drop as it is, so you don't need to really worry about this unless you need to get a 5 slot. Save can be saved if Modulator 4 is questionable because I don't know if they do drop with a Might 3. If you're lucky, then it might, but you might need to manipulate this. For the base fodder, this is something you would definitely need to manipulate because an S-Guard Soak does not drop with a Modulator. Yeah, it does not drop with a Modulator. These two do not drop together. And then you got all these other pieces, but they're not as bad compared to something like this and this. So, this next panel, the 4th panel, actually explains how you can get an S-Guard Soul with a Modulator. If you can see what I'm getting at, then good on you. If not, then I'll give you guys a couple seconds to figure this out. There's nothing wrong with you doing this. It's just that, what does it take to get to this point? So, with the fact that to get the highest percentage you need 3 of these, it's a sheer fact that you need to go and get 3 of these some way and somehow in some fashion. Yeah, you need 3 other 5 slots to make this piece, which then can be used for this. But not only do you need 3 of those 5 slot modulators, you need a couple more of them so you can do this. And if it took this much to do this, then it's going to be the same with this particular piece. Now, for the Might 3, it might not be as much, but for the modulators that you need to try to get this to work, then yes, it will be a lot. So you're using a lot more modulators at a 5 slot. And once again, it depends on how you got these 5 slots. So if you farm for them, great on you. If you have a lot of them especially, then you can do this formula without any sort of issue. But if you didn't, then you would need to do whatever you need to do so you can get those pieces. Once again, if this is the ideal formula you want to go for and you would do whatever you need to do it, then go ahead and do so. I'm not trying to stop you, but I want to show you guys that you got to consider what you are doing in the process of trying to get that in-game affix. So, this is what it can give you though. Now, I did make another formula, but it's with ARKS Fevers and going for an ARKS Max. The 5th panel of this, once again, you can find this in the description. There will be a link to this formula. You can see that I replaced those modulators. Now I need to replace that one. I replaced those modulators with ARKS Fever. And what I can do is do the same sort of affix, but instead of the modulator, I get the ARKS Max, and then I go for a Noble Power. And you can see that this gives roughly around the same stats, it's just that there's a 5 attack difference. So instead of 150, I get 145 for melee power. For the range, it's plus 35. Techniques plus 35. HP and PP are the same. It's plus 20 and plus 7. So, almost identical to that first affix over here. The difference is the fevers, because understand that fevers are easy to toy around with. I will have a separate video talking about fevers later. But when it comes to that Escard Stone fever, guess what? This is what it looks like. Like, you can use 2 of these Escard Stone instead. You can go with an Escard Stone and a Soul Receptor. But once again, this is on a unit. I don't know if there are unit receptors. They might add that later in-game. I don't know how they can do it for global. But the thing is, if you have 3 of these, it's not as bad. Especially if you farm for them and then if you farm for this ARKS Fever. Now, if you don't have an ARKS Fever at a 5 slot, these next 4 panels explain the process of upslotting a fever. Now, I will make a video talking about that sort of thing later. Or, I already did. It's pretty much my upslot video, but once again, I wasn't trying to talk about this. But to explain this in itself, I'm gonna say it in this video. You'll hear me talk about this again when it comes to the basic 101 video talk about upslotting. And then you'll also see some real life action of upslotting and how atrocious it can be when you go from like a 1 slot all the way up to a fucking 8 slot. So, yes, you might have a 1 slot ARKS Fever. Guess what? You can easily get this to 100% if you make sure you use at least 2 fodder materials with that base piece. So the base piece that has the ARKS Fever, 2 junk abilities, or like 2 pieces that have junk abilities on them. Make sure that you upslot it, use a 10% to do it, and you get 100. Do that same thing over here. Select all these pieces. You can see that without the boost item, it's at an 85. With 10%, it's at a 95. You can see over here that this is at a 70. Trying to go to a 4 slot, use a 30. It's 130, not a 20, a 30. It's 100%. And then last one, this is at a 90%. If you're trying to go 4 slot to a 5 slot, if you use a 30%. But guess what? With an affix weak boost, boom, you got an easy 5 slot right there with an ARKS Fever. Compared to something like this on a fucking modulator, where you're gonna try to, if you want to try to upslot this, you're gonna have to do something like that. Have this over here, then when you try to upslot it, it's gonna be like that. It's manageable, but guess what? You had to use a 30. Then from there, you will most likely have something like this. Well, you don't need a 3 slot for that one. Let's say this can go over there instead. Let me delete that. So you're gonna have something like that. You can use a 10% if you want. Then here's the problem though. You're using a bunch of other modulators to get this to a higher number. And depending on the cost, this will stack against you. Unless you farm for it and it's not as bad. And then you try to go for a 5 slot. You can use a 30, use a 10. But yeah, that's you using a lot of modulators just so you can get the highest percentage, and you try to get it to transfer from that 1 slot all the way to the desired number, which is a 5 slot. That's just emphasizing on my opinion and some points you want to consider. If you don't really care, that's on you. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put it down below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!